Hello, friends. Hey, Nancy. I can see you. I can't hear you.
Is that better, Donna?
I can hear you.
Donna?
Yes.
Ask Ben, not Ben, ask Will if he would be interested in a sketch and it's framed and it looks so nice of the tower at Lees McRae. So it's about this size.
Oh, he would love it. Okay. He would love it.
Okay, I'll put it at your door.
Thank you.
Not right now, but sometime.
Is that from when Erwin was on the board?
Yeah.
Oh.
And we just don't have a good place for it. And so I thought of Will.
He would love that. He has a couple of pictures, but they're really more like posters of the mountains. And then one year I was up in Blowing Rock.
Erwin Fuller. And
I'm
just double checking.
It's framed and it looks very nice. So when it turns up at your door, you'll know who it's for.
Thank you, Nancy. Here's Yolanda. Hold on one second. Hey, Yolanda.
Hey, Donna. I was just checking only because it's not glowing as the meeting has started. Are you in the right one?
I'm in the one you sent me.
Yeah. Are you signed in as a host or?
Well, I logged on and everything's at the bottom. I'm and the password is the Luke 6*3 Zoom departmental meetings.
Let me go to email. That's correct. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And
Usually it glows and says like the meeting has started once it started.
well, Nancy's on with me. Nobody else is. And I sent it to Fred. I sent it to Fred right after our meeting. And did you send it
Oh,
to
I
him
see
too,
it now.
Yolanda?
I didn't hear you.
Did you send the link to Fred Guttmann?
I saw your message to say that you was gonna send. You got it. You found it. And you said you would forward it. So I said, okay, well, I won't worry about it.
Good.
Like,
Well,
I've
I've sent it to him about 3 times today. And I'm hoping, since I didn't hear back again, that he got it. But Margaret and Nancy are both on, so I think we're good.
Oh, I see it glowing now. So yeah, it shows me now. I didn't refresh my screen, so I just wanted to make sure you're good before.
Thank you so much.
Finish up. Yeah, no problem. All right, enjoy.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Okay. You're welcome.
Hey, Margaret.
I have to unmute. I'm thrilled we have so many people.
I know.
I hope they all join us. That'll be 2 screens worth.
Yolanda said I'm eating a little snack right beforehand.
Good idea.
She said we had about, I think, 39 people asked for the link. So
That's
they
great.
all got the email.
And it's going to be recorded, correct?
Yes, in fact, it's already recording now.
Oh, okay. Oh,
If you had a good day,
I've been Zooming all day.
I'm so sorry, especially for a beautiful day like today.
I know a couple of people made that comment. Why are we doing this when it's outside? I'm going to click off that light behind me that's
Okay.
flashing into those glass things. It's for sure I don't want people seeing my office. I've got a lot of rouge too, haven't I? Oh,
Here's
well.
Fred.
Oh, good. Hey, Fred.
Hello, Fred.
Won't disappear again. So.
We're just gathering.
Oh, Donna. Oh, Donna.
I'm so glad you're on. I think I must have been sending to either an old email or something was a little off on your email.
No, I found it twice. I just
Oh,
didn't
good.
see it.
Good. You doing all right?
Gorgeous
Good.
day.
Oh, beautiful.
I was at the cemetery for an unveiling and then came home and did my leaves.
Good idea.
Yeah, that's what David doesn't have to do that because he's out at that wellspring, living in the lap of luxury.
They do all of that for you there, don't they?
No, I know. God, lucky people. People.
Well, Fred, you're planning to stay in town, aren't you?
Yeah, but I got grandchildren all over the place. So we're not, listen, I'll tell you this, Margaret. I am so glad I didn't sell my house and downsize because COVID made this house into Noah's Ark or Fred's Ark. My kids from Atlanta moved up with me for 3 months. We had a little pod. Both Nancy and I are working from inside of the house. The house has been a lifesaver.
That's great. Well, we have children in California and in Florida and here in North Carolina in Raleigh. And we loved traveling to see them and other traveling too. So I can't wait to be out of this. Here's Howard. Say hi. Say to Fred.
Hey, Fred.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, David.
Well, I like Jerry Beaver's beard.
Is that a cousin?
Yeah, it's my quarantine beard.
We should give him a yarmulke, pass for a Jew. A rabbi, no less.
It has to do with their microphones. People into their microphones.
How many people are you expecting?
We have we have close to 40 people. It'll be a great group. We had 40 people who asked for the link. So unless they're
That's
outside
right.
enjoying the
nice.
weather, but it's a great response.
Now I'm really intimidated.
What did he have to say?
Better start.
It's good to know that Presbyterians laugh at my jokes. That's all I can say.
You bet. You've got 5 minutes to prepare, Fred.
Oh, no. You know what's interesting about this is that, quite honestly, if I came to what's the name of that room, the Virginia Arbuckle room, or what is it?
No.
It should be Virginia Gilmer.
Yeah, if I did that, I could sit down and in 10 minutes, just on the legal pad, write out my main points. But doing it this way, it's a lot more work because you got to prepare a PowerPoint, you know. You hope your nose doesn't bleed, you know, and all of that. So.
Oh, me.
There's Pastor Jill.
Hello, Rabbi Guttmann. How are you?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, you're the only Presbyterian minister in the last 25 years that I've yet to take out to lunch.
Okay, well, eventually.
My sincere apologies.
Well, you have a pretty good excuse, I think.
Well, I'll tell you. Hey, Betsy, how you doing? Yeah, no, I told you that when they started looking for somebody, one of the people on the search committee called me up. I told you the story and said, Rabbi Guttmann, I'm from the search committee at First Presbyterian. And I said, wait, I think I'm too old. And she said, Rabbi?
I love that story.
Good.
I'm used to it. Well, good, Betsy, how are you? I can't hear you, but that's okay.
You're muted, Betsy.
We need to make a song about unmuting.
All right, I can't rename us. Jack is here too, but I can't make it rename right now. For some reason, I can't get that option. So just know that we're both here. And
That's okay.
And tuning in from Florida. So just so
wow.
you know, we feel like we get
well, at least we should all say a blessing that we're not in Texas.
No kidding.
Amen.
Who was it? Garth Brooks said all my exes are in Texas.
Oh
man.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Hey, what a state.
Well, we are with friends, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to get this. We're just going to get in the dark. Sorry about that.
We got a dog.
No, we don't. Somebody else does.
Hey, Jeannie, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Nice to see you, Rabbi.
Okay. Like all my old friends, you know, this is like a reunion. You know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The Rabbi's Presbyterian support team.
Well, Fred, people are trickling in, and it's not quite 5:30 yet, so we can just continue to have some good fellowship and
Bad jokes.
get started and some more bad jokes. Good.
Who's the music director over there now?
John Alexander.
Oh, yeah, I know John. Tell John I want him to write a song about unmuting.
He could do it at an organ recital with it.
There you go. Can you imagine that? Wow.
Put it over
You know, across the street where you guys worship for a little while, there's this 1921 pipe organ. It's a, you know, this is why you were redoing the sanctuary. And it's a Skinner pipe organ. And when I got there 26 years ago, I was interviewing and they said, you have some time you can. So I said, I'd like to go into sanctuary. You know, they thought it was going to be really spiritual. So I walked into the sanctuary. Fortunately, no one came in, turned on the organ, sat down and played Procol Harum's Whiter Shade of Pale.
Oh.
Yeah. using the foot pedals too. And luckily, luckily, Jeannie, they didn't come in. I would have never got the job.
Leave it.
I think you need to take your phone with you and your wallet.
Just goes to show you should never leave me alone in your sanctuary. God knows what I do with that.
Or phones if I.
We'd all tiptoe in and listen to you, Fred. David and I think are the only ones in this group right now that are out at Wellspring, but at 7 o'clock, we've got the Purim play gonna be over our internal television network.
From Sue Clow?
From Sue Clow, right.
Okay, that's good.
With that.
That's nice. Wow.
Trying to see people pop in like this.
Well, what do we have? We have 25 people, 25 devices.
You know, and that's a good observation, 25 devices. So even though we had 39 people register, we could have multiple people in one family. So
Yeah. Well, you know, this is great. Trip, what's your wife's name? I can't hear.
It's because we're muted.
It's Ann.
Ann. Does she still love you?
No.
No, she got over that. But it's almost 50 years, so maybe
I know.
something will develop.
I'm telling you, one thing about COVID is you really learn if you like your spouse.
No, no kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
Fortunately, in my congregation, there's been no spousal murders yet.
Yeah.
I don't know about yours, Jill, but
Plenty of time.
yeah, I know. It's really serious. I mean, my wife's a marital therapist. She told me that for some marriages, it's like great, and for others, it's a lot of stress being together all the time.
Fred, last night we started a 3-part parent series for our parents of teens on mental health in the pandemic. And that's actually one of the things that the psychologist talked about was, you know, the wonderful pieces of families being together during the pandemic, but then also some of the many challenges with people just being together in one space for long periods of time.
Listen, for people that have children at home right now, my heart goes out to them. I think it's tough, you know. Margaret, we get to see our grandchildren then leave, right?
Yeah, hopefully. Donna, you give me the signal when.
I think we should go ahead and get started. Margaret is going to start us off, and then we're going to have Jill is going to give our opening prayer, and I'll introduce Fred, and we'll get started with our class.
I need to be able to share screen.
Oh, okay. I should be able to do
Do we
that.
need to practice? Do we need to practice that before we get started, or are you okay?
That's fine.
Donna?
We'll do it, and if there's a problem, we're just gonna blame it on Neil Donovan.
If you want to make me a co-host, I can handle those permissions and stuff.
I just need to be able. I have a PowerPoint.
Wonderful. I meant to ask you about that earlier. Tim, can you? I clicked on share screen. I can't quite see how to do the.
I can do it. It's fine. I got it.
You got it? Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Woo, thank you.
Well, on behalf of the Race Task Force at First Presbyterian Church, all of us, I think, are members there with our esteemed guest, Rabbi Fred Guttmann, joining us. We had a scheduled meeting on January the 6th and decided to go ahead and meet in order to pray for our country. And those of you who know me know Howard saying, "Come on, Margaret, don't well up." It was very moving for all of us. And David Partington, in follow-up to that gathering, said, "I was horrified at the anti-Semitic symbols that were part of that group that attacked our Capitol." And I really think that we need to spend some time reflecting on what that means. And as a result of our contemplating and praying about what we should do, we decided that we would convene and invite our rabbi friends to come and talk with us about what it does mean. But one of the traditions of the Race Task Force is for us to read from a document that was adopted by the General Assembly a number of years ago, entitled Facing Racism. And this is what we read together. God created human beings, a diverse family, to live together and to love one another as God loves us. We violate God's intention for the human family by creating false categories of value and identity based on identifiable characteristics such as culture, place of origin, and skin color. We use these categories to create a race-based system which benefits some while oppressing others. Racism is fundamentally a spiritual problem because it denies our true identity as children of God. And now I ask Jill if she will open us with prayer.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you are a God of justice and mercy, abounding in loving kindness. We thank you for bringing us together tonight. We pray that you would bless our time together, that you would open our hearts and eyes, that you would shape us into better reflections of you and your character, so that we might be repairers of your world. Amen.
Thank you, Margaret and Jill. I'll just ask if everyone could please mute yourself so that we can all hear from Fred and also from each other at the end of our time together. I'm going to take just a few minutes to introduce our guest tonight, who is really not a guest to many of us. He's a friend of First Presbyterian, but Senior Rabbi Fred Guttmann, who will soon be retiring on June the 30th, right, Fred? Is that right? After many years, over 25 years at Temple Emmanuel. But prior to that, Fred was actually a rabbi and a principal in a high school in Israel. He did his undergrad at Vanderbilt and got his master's in Hebrew literature after that. He also got a master's in educational leadership. And those of you who know Fred know that he is also, along with being a rabbi, teacher, of course, he's a phenomenal educator. And so I've always appreciated that about Fred. He's always welcomed our confirmands, and visiting the temple has always been one of the highlights for our confirmands every year. Fred also got his doctorate of divinity as well in 2004. Fred helped to found the Interfaith Clergy Group here in Greensboro. And 2 years ago, I had the joy and privilege of going with that group to the Holy Land, along with Fred and Rabbi Andy and Rabbi Joshua, all three of our rabbis here in Greensboro. It was truly one of the highlights of my entire life. And I reflect back on that, how much I learned and how thankful I am to Fred for inviting me to be a part of that, to represent First Presbyterian. But part of Fred's vision for that trip is to bring people together in relationship, pastors all over Greensboro, so that when they come back, they continue to work together, work for justice, and all the things that Margaret spoke of in the vision of the Race Task Force. I could spend another 15 minutes telling you, or more than that, telling you all the awards and all the many things that Fred has done here in Greensboro, in North Carolina, and throughout our country and world. But we're grateful for him to be here tonight. And his focus is going to be on the Christian roots of anti-Semitism. And next week, Rabbi Andy will join us with ways that we can go forward together as church and temple here in Greensboro. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you. So it's so nice to see everyone. I really wish, Jill, that I could be talking about something tonight, like seeing the divinity in every human being, you know, something a little bit more spiritual, less historical. By the way, did you know, this is just one passing thing, that when you comb the side of your head, it's the word for the side of your head is the same word used as the corners of the field in Leviticus. So what's really cool about that is that the most egotistical part of my day, I can't do much with it. When I comb my hair, if I'm really spiritual, I should be thinking about giving the corners of my field to the poor. Okay. And that's a nice spiritual thing. And that's probably the last spiritual thing you're going to hear from me tonight, because it's kind of a downer and a difficult lecture to talk about. So let me just say that when Mel Gibson's film came out, The Passion of the Christ, Jewish people were really worried. It was in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke at the time, but we were concerned about how the translation of certain passages, particularly one from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 27, would be handled in the transliteration. And here you'll see, and here we can begin to see why, okay? So if we look at the passage, let me, okay, if we look at the passage from Matthew, this passage is well known to all of you, I'm sure. This is when Jesus comes before Pilate, and he asks him if he's the king of the Jews, which is really more of a political question than a religious question. By the way, the titula, the sign over the cross, was king of the Jews, which from a historical perspective lets us understand that Jesus was really murdered, I guess you could say. No, I don't guess you could say murdered, I would say, for political reasons. Anyway, then it says, when he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he gave no answers, but then Pilate said, do you hear the testimony against you, et cetera, et cetera. Then it says, now it's the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. Okay, and at that time, there was a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. If you look at the other three Gospels, there's something interesting about Barabbas. He's some of the time he's called a thief. The word for thief in the Gospel of John, the word for thief is the same word that was used to be a zealot, okay, a resistor against the Romans. And then I think it's in Luke where Barabbas is referred to as one who caused an insurrection. So this was somebody that was fighting against the Romans, a well-known prisoner. Okay, this is like choosing, between a nice rabbi or pastor and somebody that's a great warrior or something like that. But you don't see that in there. But if you look at the other three Gospels, you'll see that the way that Barabbas is described. So then the crowd had gathered. Pilate asked him, which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus, who's called the Messiah? For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him, which is a really highly difficult passage and quite prejudicial. When Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, he sent his wife a message, don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I've suffered a great deal because of him today. But then the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and have Jesus executed. Which of the two do you want me to release to? And then he says, what shall I do with Jesus, who's called the Messiah? And they answer, crucify him. And what crime he commits, but they answer more and more, crucify him. Now you need to understand that the Gospel of Matthew was written after the destruction of the temple in 70, more than 40 years after the death of Jesus. It was also within 15 years after the massacre of the Christian community in Rome. By the way, Paul was killed in that massacre. And the last thing that the gospel writers would have ever wanted to do was really, in my opinion, tell the truth, which there's hints of that in the King of the Jews business. Another thing, and say that the Romans had crucified Jesus for political purposes. But then it says that basically Jews are turned into these bloodthirsty people who are saying, crucify, crucify, crucify. And then verse 24, which if there was one, 24 and 25, which are highly difficult for Jewish people. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but instead of an uproar was starting, he took water, washed his hands in front of the crowd, and he said, I'm innocent of this man's blood. That is such garbage, okay? Because, if you excuse my accent, because the historian Josephus and also Tacitus say that Pontius Pilate crucified during his reign, so either Josephus has 30,000, and Pontius and Tacitus has more than 20,000. This Pilate was an awful bloodthirsty ruler, okay? And he says, I'm washing my hands, I'm innocent of the blood. But then the verse that I wish that the gospel had left out was number 25. His blood is on us and on our children, which is highly problematic for us as Jews, because it implies that not only were the people then shouting, crucify, crucify, let's kill Jesus, but but all of the Jews since then, okay, have been guilty of the killing of Jesus, the Messiah, the Christ. Okay, now let me just tell you that this is the basis of what is called deicide. Deicide is opposed to homicide, is the killing of a God. Jews are responsible for killing the Son of God. And it all grows out of this passage in Matthew chapter 27. All right. Other parts of the New Testament that are problematic for us is this passage from Romans, okay? For we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the work of the law. This historically, whether or not Paul intended it this way, has been used as a cudgel to brutalize Jews throughout the ages up until the modern period. What else do I have? There are 10 themes in the New Testament that have been a source of anti-Judaism and anti-Semitism. Here's a summary of them. This is from Dr. Michael Cook, who is a New Testament scholar. He says the Jews are culpable for crucifying Jesus. As such, they are guilty of deicide. The tribulations of the Jewish people throughout the history constitute God's punishment of them for killing Jesus. Jesus originally came to preach only to the Jews, but when they rejected him, he abandoned them for Gentiles instead. The children of Israel were God's original chosen people by virtue of an ancient covenant. Now, but by rejecting Jesus, they forfeited their chosenness. And now, by virtue of the new covenant or testament, Christians have replaced Jews as the God of the chosen people, and the church has become the people of God. This is also called supersessionism. The Jewish Bible repeatedly portrays the opaqueness and stubbornness of the Jewish people, their disloyalty to God. The Jewish Bible contains many predictions of the coming of Jesus as the Messiah, yet the Jews are blind to the meaning of it. By the time of Jesus' ministry, Judaism had ceased to be a living faith. Judaism's essence is restrictive and a burdensome legalism. Christianity emphasizes love, while Judaism stands for justice and the God of wrath. By the way, I hear that's in Greensboro all the time. Gosh, Judaism's oppressiveness reflects the disposition of Jesus' opponents called Pharisees, the predecessors of the rabbis, who in their teaching and their behavior were hypocrites. Okay, but that's not all, okay? The Gospel of John, and Jill, you know, we can talk about this later, but the Gospel of John, it's hard. There have been a lot of scholars that have tried to understand, New Testament scholars, what John's real attitude is towards the Jewish people. And some have been rather apologetic for him, others have not. But it really doesn't matter to me, because what happened with this unfortunate verse in the Gospel of John was it was taken by anti-Semites throughout the ages. John says, you are the father of the devil, and you want to do the desires of your father. He was a murderer. You know, we're children of the devil from the beginning and did not stand for the truth, because truth is not in him. Whenever he speaks the lie, he speaks in his own voice, because he's a liar and the father of it. Jews are children of the devil. And by the way, I just want to just throw this in on the way. It's not an anti-Semitic statement at all, but I just wanted you to know that when Jesus answers here, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. From a linguistic perspective, when we look at the word way there and how it would be translated into Aramaic or from their Hebrew, it is related to the word how we walk, or a particular road in which we walk. So from a Jewish perspective, when I look at this contra Romans 3:28, when Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, no one comes to the Father except through me. The way I interpret that, okay, is that Jesus is saying that no one comes to the Father except from behaving as I try to behave, or as I do behave. The church throughout history has downplayed that, but linguistically, the word way there has a certain behavioral connotation. Okay. Now, here's something from St. Augustine, okay? I'm not going to necessarily read it, but just explain to you what it is. It's called the witness theory. The witness theory is that because we Jews have killed Christ, we shouldn't be killed ourselves. We shouldn't be killed ourselves, but rather we should be persecuted and impoverished and whatever, so that when you see a Jew who's like really downtrodden, okay, it's proof, or that Jew's situation is proof that God hates the Jews for killing God's son. Okay, and this witness theory is in the 3rd century, which came in the 4th and 5th century, which comes from St. Augustine, is a big thing in the history of the anti-Semitism of the church. In others, if you see a Jew that's not impoverished, you should impoverish him, because by doing so, you will help prove that he is a witness to the fact that God hates him for rejecting Jesus and killing and for deicide. Okay. John Chrysostom, okay, a church father, Archbishop of Constantinople, says, do not be surprised if I've called the Jews wretched. They are truly wretched and miserable, for they've received many good things from God, yet they've spurned them, I think, and violently cast them away. The Jews were branches of the holy root, but they were locked off. Okay, I know that many have high regards for the Jews, and they think that their present way of life is holy. This is why I'm so anxious to uproot this deadly parent opinion. What the synagogue is not only a house of prostitution and a theater, it's also a hideout for thieves and a den for wild animals. I'm sorry about the typo there. The synagogue is a house of prostitution. Now, just to give you a historical perspective on this, the Crusades were brutal times for Jews. The First Crusade began with Pope Urban calling for a crusade in 1095. The First Crusade, which began in 1096, was actually 2 crusades. As they moved across Europe, they murdered Jews that they came in contact with. This is a woodcutting, I believe, showing the murder of Jews is from town to town to town to town. When they actually got to Jerusalem in 1099, they took all of the Jewish people there, locked them up in a synagogue, and burned down the synagogue on their heads. The Crusades was we're in the Middle Age, was a particularly difficult time for the Jewish people. This is from 1144, the ritual murder in Norwich, England. There was a belief that in order to make the Passover unleavened bread, or what we call matzah, that the Jews had to murder a young Christian boy, draw off his blood, and use his blood in the Passover matzah. This ritual murder was continued through the next 900 years. It was found in Russia in the late 1800s, and there was an incident of a ritual murder accusation in New York State in 1926. The problem with this, it's another name for it. I think I've got it up here, is blood libel. Blood libel. Once Jews were, yes, it's there. Once Jews were accused of blood libel in the Middle Ages, the Jewish community in that city was wiped out. And it was always predicated on the fact that a child had died somewhere around the Easter or Passover season. I put this in because I think it's very concerning to us as Jews. During the current pandemic, the Black Death killed 1/3 of Europe, and the Jews. Here's a picture of Jews being burned to death because they were accused of causing the Black Death. Okay, they probably said this is the Jewish virus, not the China virus, but the Jewish virus. And so Jews were accused of I call it a double whammy. We either died because we, like everybody else as a human being, 1/3 of Europe died during those years, or we were accused of poisoning the wells or causing the virus in some way or another, and were murdered because of that. Here is an interesting story. This is what's called host desecration, in 1478. It's kind of interesting because what's being depicted here is that Jews are taking the communion wafer and stabbing it, okay, just like supposedly we stabbed the body of Jesus. And the belief, okay, among the peasantry was that Jews did this, and if they did it enough, blood would come out of the communion wafer. Of course, that's ridiculous, because if you take a knife and you stab a communion wafer, all you're going to get is a bunch of crumbs. But the accusation was that Jews had moved into the church or snuck into the church, stole the communion wafers, the host, and then undertook this barbaric ceremony of stabbing it until the blood of Jesus came out. So I'm getting closer to the end because I want to allow. I'm going very fast in order to allow for discussion and questions. I just wanted to say that between the years 250 and 1948, 1700 years, we've experienced more than 80 expulsions from various countries in Europe. You know, it says in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. But what people don't know is in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella expelled all of the Jews of Spain. In 1496, they were expelled from Portugal, the entire Iberian Peninsula. You know, I've always felt that it said that the poem should read in 1492, Columbus left and the Jews did too. But we were just out. Jews were expelled from England. France expelled us 5 times, which means I guess they invited us back at least 4. Austria, Germany, Lithuania, Spain, Portugal, Bohemia, Moravia, and 71 other countries. Okay. I really don't want to go into this, but Martin Luther was no fan of the Jews. He wrote a treatise called "The Jews and Their Lives." It's brutal. It's absolutely a brutal thesis of his hatred for the Jews. I'm going to skip through that, but you can look it up. All right, now let's step back from Christian anti-Semitism for just a second. And in order to do that, we have to understand that today there are at least 6 different bases for anti-Semitism. One is what is called economic anti-Semitism. We hate Jews because they possess too much wealth and power. This, by the way, was found in the late 1800s in Russia. It was found in France with Count Guttmann is found with the Chamberlain. Chamberlain, not the in the late 1800s, not the prime minister of England. Here's the point. Okay, Jews have too much power. When Hitler picks this up in 1923 and 1924, in Mein Kampf, he says that Jews want to control all the wealth and power in the world, and therefore choke the rest of the world economically. Other source of anti-Semitism, we hate Jews because they arrogantly claim that they are the chosen people. Of course, that nothing could be further to the truth. For us, the concept of the chosen people is an obligation to try to be holy. Doesn't mean that we're better than anybody else. That's absurd. The scapegoat Jews are a convenient group to single out and blame for our troubles. In 1881 and 1882, after the assassination of Nicholas II, Alexander the second, his son, blamed the Jews in order to move off the hatred of the masses towards the institution of the Tsar. Deicide, we've gone over. Outsiders, we hate Jews because they're different from us. And racial theory, because we hate Jews because they are an inferior race. Okay, they are an inferior race. This racial theory, this hatred of Jews as a race, which is absurd because Jews are anything but a race. We have Black Jews and Oriental Jews and Jews, all different types of colors and shades of Jews. But with the racial theory, it becomes particularly pronounced during the time of the Nazis, because during the Spanish Inquisition, you could convert and save your life and not have to move. But there was no possibility of converting out of being Jewish during the time of the Nazis, because if you were Jewish, you were part of an inferior race that was the target of extermination. So I'm not going to go into this. Okay. Anti-Semitism is unique among the hatreds in the world because it's a combination of four aspects. Number one, it's been around a really long time. It even precedes Christianity. There was anti-Semitism 200 years before Jesus in Egypt. Universality, it's virtually everywhere in the world. Intensity, it's expressed in a particularly virulent manner. Confusion, there seems to be little agreement today on why people seem to hate Jews. Here's something that I think is very interesting. Okay, anti-Semitism is alone, and this came out in a book that was printed by Dr. Deborah Lipstadt of Emory University about 2 years ago on anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is unique in the hatred of the world because if you take most types of racism and bigotry, it's meant to keep people down. Okay, the people that are perceived as being lower than you down. That's what I mean by punching down. Anti-Semitism is unique because there's a perception that the people that you hate are above you, and therefore you're punching up in order to bring them down. And according to Dr. Lipstadt from Emory University, that makes anti-Semitism unique in terms of the various types of hatred and bigotry in the world. So when in Charlottesville, okay, when they marched a couple of years ago and they started saying Jews will not replace us, Jews will not replace us, there were two connotations to that. One is Jews will not replace us with immigrants, and two, Jews will not replace us in the power structure. We as the white people will continue to rule, and we're not going to let these Jews take away our ability to rule the world. By the way, a friend of mine was a rabbi up there. At that time, the temple was threatened to be burned down. And there were people standing outside, these white supremacists standing outside the temple on that Saturday morning. And they called the police and the police didn't come. Okay, they were too much involved with what was going on downtown. So my friend and they took the sacred scrolls out of there, went through the back of the back door, and they escaped. They were really afraid that they would be murdered or that the building would be burned down. Here are pictures from January 6th. Okay, needless to say, the KKK and the white supremacist movement is virulently anti-Semitic. It used to be that the only place you could find a copy of the book called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a pseudepigraphal group, a book from the early 1900s in Russia, that said that there were elders of Zion. The protocols that they had, the notes of their meaning was how Jews were going to take over the world. And it used to be that the only place that you could get that was at a KKK bookstore. Or having grown up in Nashville, Tennessee, I actually walked into a bookstore run by a group called the White Citizens Council, and I saw the book there. Okay, the White Citizens Council was the quote genteel version of the KKK, and of course, this is a very troublesome picture here. This picture, fortunately, you can't get that anymore. But this was a picture that was in a T-shirt that was in that demonstration and other demonstrations, which basically means, and here on the 6th, I couldn't believe it, so I looked up. This doesn't exist online anymore, okay? But I found a company that was selling this black T-shirt. 6MWE means 6 million was not enough. Okay, 6 million Jews who died in the Holocaust. So among them were 1/3 children. That was not enough. Terribly anti-Semitic T-shirt that was found at white supremacist rallies for years, and particularly during the past 4 years. This is an interesting shirt. You might have seen that. This is from the rally. This guy who's been charged now has Camp Auschwitz. Auschwitz was one of the 6 Nazi death camps. 1,200,000 Jews were murdered at Auschwitz. And on the back of his, I don't have a picture of this, on the back of the shirt, he has the word staff, okay? He has the word staff. And then you see that it says at the bottom of the shirt, it says work brings freedom. Can you see that, Donna? Thumbs up if you can see that. Okay, so it says work brings freedom. Now, where did that come from? It came from, well, let me just show you this. This is a picture of this fellow in the Capitol doing, they're having a good time because they tore off the sign of Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker of the House. But where did this thing, work brings freedom, come from? It came actually from these gates of Auschwitz and other death camps and concentration camps, where it says Arbeit macht frei, which means work makes you free. Work makes you free. Of course, this was a lot of nonsense for the people walking into this death camp. They wanted them to believe it. The most interesting thing about this is the word for work, Arbeit. If you look at the third letter, the B is upside down. And we don't know why. There's a theory or kind of a legend that it was that the people that made the sign were Jewish slaves, and that they did it on purpose to let people know this is not what you think it is. Okay, but you can see that this is in Auschwitz in Poland, with the upside down B. I have taken groups there to this place 19 times. Okay, here's a group that I took a few years ago. You can see the Arbeit macht frei. By the way, I think this was 2018. You might see that there was a man in a wheelchair at that time. That was Hank Brott, a survivor in our congregation that spoke all over the town. He died within the past year. He was a survivor of 5 Nazi concentration camps. Okay, a few more things and then we're coming home, Jill. This is a chart of anti-Semitic incidents over the last decade, and you can see how during the last, particularly pre-COVID, the number of anti-Semitic incidents in the United States increased greatly. And this, you know, when you unleash hate, which is what was done during the last 4 years, it goes everywhere. There's no controlling it. So, you know, the President Trump can rightly say, I have Jewish grandchildren. How could I be anti-Semitic? I don't believe that Trump was anti-Semitic. But what happened was with the unleashing white supremacists and other things, okay, which whether he intended it or not, it's not the issue here. The fact is that anti-Semitism went up in 2017, 2018, 2019, prior to COVID, and it went down with COVID and it's on its rise again. Let's see. And this is the number of anti-Semitic tweets. And you can also see that this has gone up from January to January in 2018. Okay. So next week, Rabbi Koren is going to talk about another type of anti-Semitism, lead you guys in what can be done. Lord, a typo. What can we do? What can we do together? Thanks for listening. I appreciate the friendship that exists between Temple Emmanuel and First Presbyterian Church. I have to tell you, Jill, you know, I know half of the people on this call, okay, because we've been getting in good trouble, as John Lewis said, in our community. So anyway, I will take down my screen and turn it over to you guys, and we can go from there. I'm yours.
Why don't we just open it up? If you'd like to ask Fred a question for discussion, you can either raise your hand or you can just unmute yourself and ask your question. We can put some in the chat too, if you like.
Okay, I'm sorry for, you know, this is your fault, Donna, okay? Because this is what Donna asked me to speak about. I would have rather talked about the spirituality of humankind, but whatever. Sorry.
We'll have you come back for that.
Thank you. No questions? None? I couldn't be that intimidating.
I'll just comment, I think, Fred, on, hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Enjoyed.
Sarah the matriarch.
Oh, no, I didn't enjoy this, actually. This made me very uncomfortable and sad. And it reminded me of how I felt when I watched a documentary on racism earlier this year with a group from our church. I didn't know that anti-Semitism, well, I know the story of Moses. I know what happened to him. I didn't know what happened in between Moses and Hitler. I don't think I've ever been taught that. And so I really learned a lot tonight, and I appreciate it. And it's not information that I like, and I don't like how your lecture made me feel. But I guess, you know, like many of the evil things in our world, it goes way back, doesn't it? It goes way back. And there's really not any sound basis for it. And it's, so thank you.
You're welcome. Let me just add to this that Vatican II was in 1963 addressed the issue of deicide, and did so by basically saying that people could not hold the Jews responsible. You know, the Obergammerl passion plays were very problematic with because in these plays they were making it appear that Jews were killing Jesus. That, by the way, I started out with how uncomfortable the Mel Gibson film made us, because we were worried that all of a sudden we would be blamed for Jews. But the Catholic Church with Pope John the 23rd said basically that the death of Jesus was part of an overall plan of God. This was their theology, and therefore people that wanted to blame Jews or anybody else for that were really sorely mistaken, and that wasn't the main emphasis of the passion and the death of Jesus. So they went in that direction, and it was actually quite good. The only thing I will tell you, Sarah, is that this is history, okay? And we can learn from history, but we don't have to be bound by it. We don't have to be bound by it. We, Margaret, I think you were there when there was one with us. We went down, I think it was in 2016 or 2015, to the courthouse where the Board of Elections was going to eliminate Sunday voting and eliminate the precinct, which they did at A&T, and they were doing all of this stuff. It was there was Catherine Lindley was the head of it. I think for some reason, Margaret, I think you were there that night. But anyway, so were you? Okay, so we were down there, and I walked in with my dear friend Julie Peoples and T. Anthony Spearman, and we sat in the front. And the three of us decided that at exactly 5 minutes into the presentation of theirs about how they were going to cut off this voting times and early voting in the precincts and everything, that we were going to destroy the meeting. And we did. It's a really funny thing. Somebody had a film of it. I wish I had it today. So I'm sitting on this side, Julie's here, and T. Anthony's over there. There's 400 people there. And on the film, you can see Julie just whack me and then whack T. Anthony and stand up and say, "Let the people vote." Okay. And all of a sudden, 400 people stood up and started doing that. And at that particular moment, I decided that instead of just shouting at them, that we should sing. So we started singing civil rights songs, and they were so, excuse me, Sarah, pissed off. They were so mad. They were so mad. And then they said, Catherine Lindley wants to see the three of you. So we walked up there, and we came this close to being arrested. We really did. But I told him, I said, what are you going to do? Arrest all 400 people? Do you think if you take us out in handcuffs that this is going to calm the thing down? So eventually, Kimmel, I think wasn't that his name, Mark? Jim Kimmel took them outside of the room and then came back and said, "We're going to give you what you want." But that's what I'm talking about, Sarah. Okay, what we do in the future is equally, if not more important, than the history that we learned today. Okay. My role was to give you the history. I think hopefully next week, Rabbi Koren will talk about the future.
I appreciate it. And I would bet you that the man carrying the Confederate flag and the man wearing the offensive sweatshirt about the concentration camp don't know the history.
Yeah, I agree with you.
There was hold on, David, I'll just mention one thing. There was a terrible anti-Semitic incident 2 years ago at Kaiser, okay? And there were really a bullying of one of my kids, a 13-year-old girl. And they didn't take it seriously. And the next day I walked in there and sat in the lobby, not the lobby, the office of the principal, and said, "I'm not leaving until I talk to the principal." I said, "You've got to do something about that." And they did do it. It turns out that one of the kids, though, was an Asian kid, and he had just gone on with these white kids. Okay. He didn't really know. And I knew his father. And I called up his father and I said, "Bring him in. Let's sit down and talk." And we really did succeed in doing some good education with that young man. I didn't try to do anything with the other two. David, I'm sorry.
Well, it's really sobering presentation, and also just my own ignorance. You know, I'm pushing 82. I've not heard these. I've grown up. I've heard the term Christ killers that people have used, and also the stuff about money. But it leads me to believe that the people in Charlottesville or in Washington on the 6th, they really don't know anything of that, but somehow a big clump of hatred has just funneled down into the world towards anyone different, and particularly towards Jews without any understanding of what you said. It's just become this terrible clump of hatred, and so difficult to address.
Mhm. Yeah, whenever the world is filled with hate, the Jews will always be a target. That's the way I feel. I mean, some people say we're the canaries in the coal mine, but it's there.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, David, for all that you do. Your letter to the people at Wellspring meant an awful lot.
Fred, this is Neil. Why do you think that the fact that Jesus himself was a Jew hasn't helped discourage people from being anti-Semitic?
That's a great question. Okay. Well, first of all, you should know that during the Nazi era, the theologians tried to write out all of the Jewishness of Jesus in the New Testament. They actually rewrote passages and of the New Testament to remove the Jewish references to Jesus. I also think that it's a real problem. You know, if I were a pastor, I can tell you that one book I would have in my library, which I would imagine that you and Jill have, is Amy Jill Levine's New Testament commentary. Amy Jill Levine is a wonderful scholar, a New Testament scholar at Vanderbilt. She's spoken here in the past. But you know what? The years ago, Jill, we did a, I think it was with, yes, it was with First Presbyterian. We did a thing of how Jews and Christians read the Ten Commandments. It was a study series of 2 or 3 times. I think Sydney and I did it together. And I think that there's, if you read the New Testament, particularly the Synoptic Gospels, from a Jewish perspective, it doesn't take away anything of a person's faith. It actually adds to it. Okay, it adds to it when you think that during that particular time, not by Pontius Pilate, but one of the Roman governors crucified 700 Jews on the road from Jaffa to Jerusalem. Okay, there's been times when I've told Christians, including pastors, how many I would ask them how many people did Pontius Pilate kill, and they all say 3. Okay, but people that have more of an understanding of history and a good seminary education will know it's a lot more. And if you read Josephus and Tacitus, I think, Josephus has Pontius Pilate murdered 30,000 Jews. This was all to keep Roman imperial authority in power. So I think, here was the interesting thing. When the Mel Gibson movie came out, I called up Pat Cronin of blessed memory. I don't know if you know him. He was the pastor at Friendly Avenue Baptist, just down the street from where we are. And I said, Pat, I want to take you to that to see the Passion, Mel Gibson's movie. But I want you to, and I'll pay for your ticket. But afterwards, we have to go to Starbucks together, okay, to have a talk about it. So you can imagine, the first one, it was at the Grand Cinema at 12 o'clock, and in walk Rabbi Eli Havivi, Rabbi Andy Koren, Rabbi Fred Guttmann, and a Southern Baptist pastor, Pat Cronin, okay? And we walked in. Boy, I tell you, I was a little afraid, to be honest with you, as to what was, because the 3 of us had skull caps on. But sure enough, when we came out of there, we went to Starbucks and we bought Pat coffee and heard what Pat had. Pat thought it was a terribly brutal movie. He didn't like it at all because in his theology, the issue wasn't the passion but the resurrection. The so-called joy comes in the morning. So I think that some of the times, if you read, this is a very lengthy answer, and I'm sorry, Neil, but if you read the New Testament and from a historical perspective, it only gives one more appreciation of what that world was like, and it doesn't take anybody's marbles away. It's not a challenge. It's not a challenge to a person's faith at all.
Yeah. The other irony I should have mentioned is that well more than half of our Holy Scriptures are the Hebrew Scriptures. And so, the pastors are required to learn some Hebrew. We honor the Hebrew prophets and the Hebrew sages. We have to study these 39 books of and I appreciate when you said, don't call it the Old Testament. I don't know whoever said that.
Yeah, we call it the Hebrew Bible.
Right. It's like the Old Testament sounds like it's old or out of date or not as important. And that's not really has never been part of our theology or our biblical studies understanding, but that's just another irony that puzzles me.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Neil, one of the questions about how Jesus turned out not to be a Jew was in the late 1800s in the European nationalism, where all the nations are really, and they don't know much about biblical archaeology. So especially the German theologians say that Jesus was from Galilee, which was not pure. Not Jewish down in the south, but was really an Iranian or an Indian who had come in when the Assyrians removed the northern tribes, and they brought other people from other parts of the empire in, so that Jesus was really Aryan, and so he was not really a Jew.
Yeah. And that theory, of course, as you know, Rabbi Beavers, is garbage. I still like the beard. I really do. That it's all garbage.
Yes, amen. Yeah.
Good. What else? Do you know something about your pastor? You know, her in Hebrew, the name Jill is Yael. Okay. Or Jael. Where's that from? Anybody know? Jill must know. Look it up. It's the story of
Yael.
Yeah, it's the story. Yeah. Yael is her name. Okay, which actually is a coalescence of two words for God, Yah and El. But this is in the story of Deborah in the book of Judges, where where Yael comes across Sisera, the general, and offers him milk. We ask for water. He offers him milk. He lays down because the milk makes him sleepy. He lays down, and then Yael, alias Jill, takes a tent peg and puts it through his temple as he's asleep, and the text says that it goes all the way through to the ground.
It's pretty gruesome, isn't it?
Well, now you know why I'm going to call you Yael.
Watch out.
I know, but the difference is that the modern day Jill doesn't give headaches to anybody.
Rabbi Jack.
Yes. Hi, Jack. How are you today?
We're doing great. Thank you. It's great to see you. What has been the experience of your congregation and members out in the community with issues of anti-Semitism and the the kind of thing that we see paraded around publicly in some of the public gatherings. Are your members experiencing that, encountering that? Is your congregation, is your facility encountering anti-Semitic pushback?
Not really, not a lot. I will tell you that on Yom Kippur one year, I think about 7 or 8 years ago, my house was vandalized. Because they knew, whoever did that knew that I was not going to be there. Now on Yom Kippur, I leave it in the morning, my family and I leave in the morning, and we don't come back until the evening because we're fasting and we're staying there. So my house was minorly vandalized. But anyway, nothing, thank God, has happened to the temple. But there have been some anti-Semitic incidents in the public schools, or actually not just the public schools, in some of the charter schools. And my job is to really help people work that through and make sure that we protect, that our children are protected and understand that there's nothing wrong with them just because they're Jewish, and that they should be proud of who they are. And that's a thank you, Jack, for that question.
And when I was working at NCCJ, this was 20 years ago, maybe, not quite that long, 15 maybe. I remember some of the Anytown kids coming into a meeting we were having one night. It was not during Anytown, it was afterwards. And some of the kids had come in with some flyers that were being put in mailboxes in their neighborhood. And it gave us an opportunity for some very interesting conversation. But it was, you know, flyers that were unasked for, that just appeared randomly in a neighborhood where somebody had gone around and stuffed mailboxes. I don't know if that sort of thing still goes on. I don't know that anything ever came out of it other than just very hate-filled, anti-Jewish kinds of propaganda, I guess is what it was. But it really was worrisome to the kids, to the teenagers who didn't quite know what to do with it and had never seen anything like that.
Yeah, well, there were times when we would have services down on Green Street across from your church that our cars would be leafleted, I guess you could say. But usually they weren't anti-Semitic leaflets. It was like more, well, I think you could call them anti-Semitic, but the people that put these things out were trying to show us that we were wrong and blind, and that we should accept Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. And so these were put on our cars, and not by people from First Presbyterian, but not only in front of the temple, but a lot of us would be parking along that curvy way outside of the steps coming down from your sanctuary, and they would be on those cars too. And that seemed to happen quite a bit a few years ago. We did have times when I was down there that I was very worried about anti-Semites coming in. I was much more worried about anti-Semites on Green Street than I am on Jefferson Road. And so usually I made sure that you guys know Reggie, because I think, does he still work for you, Jill? And so I'd always have Reggie standing out there in the front, because at least back then he looked like a muscle-bound superhero, you know. And then I also had Mace on the pulpit underneath the lectern in case. But you know what? I'm glad I don't do that anymore. I'm glad I don't feel that level of concern. You know, in Jewish tradition, Elijah the prophet is just whooshed up into heaven, and he never really dies. And so his task is to come back and announce the coming of the Messiah. So in Christianity, the Elijah role is played by John the Baptist. Okay, now in Jewish tradition, we're waiting for Elijah to come. Right? Elijah to come, and so And there's all sorts of traditions that sometimes he comes and to see if the rest of us are ready, okay, for him to come. So one night down at Green Street, this disheveled person walked in with a, backpack or something, a large backpack, and sat down in the front row. And I was scared to death. I was scared to death until I realized that that this person was a homeless Jew, and he had walked in. And so after our services, when we had refreshments and whatever, that was his dinner. That was his dinner. So I think that that's important. I will just give you a story about Barbara Douay and me. I doubt Barbara even remembers this story, but we went out one day for lunch, and I said to her, "Can you imagine if Jesus came back and was riding down the road on Friendly Avenue and saw all these churches? What would he think?" And so we were being creative at that particular point, and she said he'd look up at all of the crosses and would think, oh my God, the Romans are still in charge. Okay, they're still stringing up Jews and other people. Okay, because from a historical person from the time of the Second Temple would see the cross on top of a church as an electric chair or something like that, a vehicle of capital punishment. Well, so we were talking about that, and then I said, okay, so what would happen if he came down to the Green Street area? This is before we had moved, and we decided that he would go to Holy Trinity, First Presbyterian and Temple Emmanuel, and say, I'm here. It is irrelevant if this is the first or second time that I've come, but I want everybody to go home now and get your toolboxes and meet in an hour in Fisher Park. And from there, I'm going to take you to this place and we're going to start building houses for the poor. Okay. And we agreed that, you want to talk about the second coming or the first coming, it doesn't matter. But if this is what a carpenter would do. So Barbara doesn't remember that story. She probably thinks I made it up, but I didn't. Great. I can't hear you, Betsy. I don't know if she's talking to me or whatever. Okay, good.
I just want to say, well, thank you, first of all, but I think it is really important for us as Christians to see how embedded anti-Semitism is in our history and even sometimes within our scripture in the way that it's been interpreted by some of the theological greats of our tradition. And to try and recognize that when we're preaching and teaching too, and be mindful of explicitly calling some of that out. I'm not sure I do that enough, but I need to be very mindful of that, especially I think given the recent happenings in Pittsburgh and where people who grew up in Christian churches went in and massacred Jewish people. And somehow didn't get a word that was antithetical to Jesus and the gospel. So thank you for helping us.
Well, it's my pleasure. You weren't here when this happened, but the 2 nights after the Pittsburgh massacre, we had 2,000 people at Temple, okay, including a lot of people from your congregation for a memorial service. What was really neat about it is that about 1,300 were in the building and another 700 were outside of the building. And the people who were outside of the building, there's a fountain there that you can stand up there. Some people got up on the edge of the fountain and they started singing and praying together. So the prayers were going on the inside and also on the outside. It was just amazing. Okay, it was just an amazing show solidarity, interfaith solidarity, and an expression of a community dedication against all forms of bias, bigotry, racism, and hate. So, you know, this community can do some very good things when it wants to. Other questions or comments? So I will tell you that I love First Presbyterian. Okay, there was when we decided to move, and we really did have to move. I mean, it's just that building was just not big enough. The congregation, when I got here, had 360 families in 1995. By the year 2000, it had 525. So we had experienced a lot of growth. And I really remember that that those years, there were people that were trying to say that we had to stay down there, and they said, "Well, this is going to ruin our relationship with First Presbyterian," and that just did not happen. That did not happen. Sid and I were very close friends. We marched together in marches. We wrote statements together. And it just goes to show you that relationships in a town like Greensboro are not so much an issue of geography as they are of relations, okay, person-to-person contact. There was a time, and Andy will talk about it next week, where we came to your church and we gave Sid an award of appreciation. There's also something, I don't know if you've seen it, but this is kind of a testimony of how crazy I am. That when they were building, do you know about this? The Life Center? Okay, they were building the Life Center, and I got out of my car one day and I saw that they were laying in pavers, okay? And I ran over to the office of our First Presbyterian and said, "How much is that? Is it a paver?" Okay. And they looked at me as though I was nuts. And they said, $100. I said, "I want to buy one." So I bought a paver and it's out there, Jill. I don't know if you've seen it. It says Mazel Tov, Temple Emmanuel. Okay. So that's geography and relationships.
I'm gonna look for it. I haven't seen it. I'm gonna look for it.
You haven't? Oh,
No, I'll go look. Should have been part of our
tomorrow.
prayer walk. What?
Yeah, it's right. It's in the area right outside those two big doors.
Okay. All right. I'm on it.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, Rabbi Guttmann, you love us and we love you. And you have done so much prior to tonight to help us to create a community of understanding. And certainly tonight you have helped us to both be in sorrow, but ending with a smile on your face and those wonderful tokens of love and friendship. We're so very grateful.
Listen, only good things are going to happen. We're going to, we're going to push back this virus. We're going to recreate our community, and with God's help, it's going to even be more just and more compassionate than it was before. We will address the problems of race. And I think there's reason to be optimistic. We can do good things when we work together. And I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. And I will tell you this, that there are many things that bother me about COVID. Among them is not only the disease, but the fact that we're not able to get together in person, that I hate music on Zoom. Jill, I can't stand it. Okay. I mean, you guys got great music over there, and I would imagine it stinks on Zoom. Our music not as good as yours, but it's not bad. And it really, it's terrible. So I'm looking forward to coming back and being part of the community. But I will say this, that I really want to salute First Presbyterian on their choice of their senior pastor. I think that you've made a great choice. And one of the things that I really hope in the post-COVID period that will happen is that not only will we go to lunch together, Jill, but we'll get in good trouble and maybe even arrested together. You know,
good trouble. Let's
good
let's
trouble.
do it.
As John Lewis said, we'll get in good trouble.
Absolutely.
Fred, I hope she can go with you to Israel too. And I want to thank you for all of the trips you've planned. And Donna got to go, and Sid and Kathy got to go. And thank you so much for planning those trips. And I hope more of our members and clergy can go in the future.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Fred, David Partington is going to have our closing prayer, but I wondered if before he did that, if you might lead us in a song. We know singing on Zoom is not necessarily that great, but we can even stay muted and you can sing. Okay, so here's a song that I actually was once sung at First Presbyterian by their choir. Okay, yeah, I don't know if they still sing it, but it's based on Psalm 93, the world should be built on love. Okay, so here was the song that actually, again, was sung at First Presbyterian. We've used it in Interfaith. It goes like this. I must build this world from love. La-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you must build this world from love. La-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And if we build this world from love, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, then God will build this world from love. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So John Alexander has that sheet music. Thank you all. Thank you so much, Fred. We look forward to, we hope that you can join us next week. We'd love to hear more of your vision of how we can continue to be neighbors to one another.
Thank you.
David, can you end us in prayer? Thank you.
Gracious God, we've heard sobering words tonight from your child, Fred. And they've penetrated us in ways that will be revealed as we continue on this journey. But there are other words that penetrate our hearts also. We share a common creed. We're Micah's people. He called us to do justice and love kindness and walk humbly with you. We saw no evidence of that in that horrible time in January. Together we join hands and we let that be our common creed. And when we live it together, it can enable us to sing and to rejoice and to be glad. So send us from this place in a unanimity of spirit as those who commit to doing justice, loving kindness, and walking humbly with you. Amen.
Amen. Okay. Good night, everyone. So
thank you again, Fred.
See all my old friends and all my new friends. And good luck, Jill. Good luck, Jill. And my advice to you is to watch out for Margaret Arbuckle.
Duly noted.
There's a lot of good trouble there.
There is. Okay.
Take care. See y'all.
What we do is we do these, we call these Zoom hearts, just Zoom hearts to everybody. So take care. I'm going to go make dinner, and I hope you have a good night. And above all, stay safe. Stay safe. Let's beat this virus. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.